Scorn, the first-person horror adventure in a biomechanical world that many, including myself, have been looking forward to for years, has released to some rather interesting review scores, ranging anywhere from a 9 out of 10 to as low as a 2 and a 4 out of 10. I am personally enjoying the experience quite a bit and don't necessarily agree with a lot of the criticisms within these reviews, but I acknowledge it has flaws, and I think in particular, the introduction is going to lose a lot of people. Many negative reviews cite frustrating puzzles and aimless wandering, which I think is a fault of the game's introduction, and by proxy, its tutorial. While the game's environments, atmosphere, and animations are as undeniably beautiful as they are equally grotesque, the game fails to present a clear goal to the player, and if I'm being honest, there's really no sense of direction whatsoever. I absolutely do not wish the game held the player's hand more, nor do I wish that it had text pop-ups explaining mechanics, nor do I wish the character talked to themselves through the entire game's puzzles. But I do wish it had learned from Portal. The game starts with the player seeing multiple locked doors with strange symbols, something that will not really be fully introduced to the player until hours later. And spoiler alert, these doors at the start are completely and utterly pointless to progression. I really don't get it. After a short walk through the dilapidated tunnels and receiving an arm tool, the player enters a large circular room with a spiraling structure in the middle, strange biomechanical contraptions, and additional rooms with their own machines to interact with. There are train tracks that can be adjusted to change where they lead, a door that is not openable, there's a hand cart that cannot be interacted with, there's some other type of object that moves but does nothing near the cart, there's a chair with a saw blade attached, there's another chair that may or may not be a toilet with some sort of scoop on it or something. Hidden in a side room is an elevator leading to an upper floor with yet another strange mechanism with a wall of alien ovally objects. As someone who would most certainly call themselves an absolute gamer, someone with game design experience, and someone who has played games for decades, I was overwhelmed and frustrated by this overload of things I just did not understand. After spending almost an hour in this room, I finally solved just the first part of the puzzle. Like, what the hell do I do? We're at the beginning of the game. Like, this is the first thing I've done. And it didn't feel rewarding whatsoever. I felt like I had slammed my head against a brick wall until I finally broke through. And unfortunately, it is seeming this is the case with both players and reviewers alike. This introduction will quickly turn players away not only because of its obtuse nature, but because, despite finally finding the solution, I felt like it had been a huge waste of time rather than a revelation. Now compare this to a game like Portal, which as we all know is a beloved and critically acclaimed puzzle game where each mechanic is introduced to the player in simple, incremental steps. The player is introduced to the portal mechanic immediately, before they are even able to leave the very first room. They are then in a small room with a button, and are taught that buttons open doors or some other mechanism. By showing the player exactly how these mechanics work before they even really need to think about how to solve a puzzle, they will have a grasp of cubes, buttons, momentum, electric balls, or whatever they're called, and portals themselves. The player can then confidently enter a room knowing their objective, which is to reach the exit, and how the pieces of the puzzle work. Now, instead of aimless wandering and questioning what you're doing there, they can use the tools they already understand to solve the larger puzzle. And this is exactly where Scorn's frustration come into play. The player is almost immediately thrown into a large and complicated situation. What is the player's goal here? How do they even achieve the goal? Well, that's not at all clear upon entering the room. In fact, the actual way of reaching the first part of the puzzle isn't even in sight when the player initially enters the room. The player's eye is naturally drawn to the spiraling structure in the center, which is just a control for the train tracks. You don't understand what any of the machines do or how they can help you achieve whatever you're doing, so where do you start? What will help you? Is the goal the giant door, or is it another sealed off area? Do you need to backtrack to those other locked doors you saw in the past? Why can't I move this cart? Why would I need a giant saw blade and a chair to help? And if by sheer luck you start with the upper floor wall of things, you will notice that there are 2 glowing ones and 1 glowing slot. Okay, so the first one goes over into the slot, and that's not too bad. But then you move the claw, and it immediately crumbles. Nothing happens. So why would I continue working on this wall? Why in the holy shit would they have the egg, meat sack, whatever, that you need to solve the room get destroyed when you already don't understand what it is, what it does, or how it will help you? The first one won't work though, for some reason. Don't know why. Why did it? I don't know. And once you get this egg, how does it help you progress? What even is it? Long story short, the egg has a creature in it, and you can either take it and steal its hand, or cut it out of its shell and have it live long enough to help you. Then, not much further past this area, there is an area with a switch, much like the one in Portal. Except in this game, you don't know it exists, and it is almost entirely indistinguishable from the environment. The game gives no indication whatsoever that this is a pressure plate. You literally just have to stumble over it and accidentally have it activate. Now, does everything in this room, and beyond in Scorn, need an introduction like Portal's mechanics? No, absolutely not. It can be as obscure as it wants to be, but it is paramount to the player experience in an unknown world with unknown machinery and unknown rules that the player can somehow understand how things work. Now, imagine in Portal, all of these mechanics that are shown in simple situations were all just thrown into a massive room. The player experience would have been completely different. So, how could Scorn have learned from Portal? Instead of showing an absolutely pointless locked door at the start of the game, what if Scorn had shown a lone egg, similar to the one at the large puzzle room, with a creature who had just come out of it, but it's dead, and its hand is stuck in a mechanism with a second right next to it. The player then interacts with it and opens the door, very reminiscent of the one that shows later in the larger puzzle. Now what if, as they progressed in the hallways towards the large room, they encounter other machines that also appear in the room that have already served their function, showing the player the gory after effects of activating one. Now, call me crazy, but what if there was a wall with more of the eggs lining it, showing that the creature that you already used to open the door could spill out of those eggs too, and now you're familiar with what the wall will look like. One of the eggs could even be glowing and intact on this wall. Now, maybe you could have the player take one of the glowing eggs, crack it open with one of the machines, and then drag the creature to a door. This is a smaller version of the large room's puzzle, but now you understand the mechanic and know how it's going to help you. In this example, the player would understand 3 things before entering the large puzzle. Number 1, they would know how to open the door. You need yourself and another set of hands to operate both panels. Number 2, what the effects of the machines in the large puzzle room are. For example, the saw blade cuts the shell off of the creature and doesn't kill it like you would expect. Number 3, what the eggs are, and how you could potentially get a creature from one to help you. By making just a few small changes to the opening before this large puzzle, the player would feel less frustrated, have a sense of what their goals are, and immediately understand what they might need to do because they've already done each of these things in little pieces. Doing this, the game still wouldn't need to have that wall of text explaining each machine, or a character talking out loud to themselves while trying to work through a solution, because the player understands what their end goal is, and now they just need to utilize the tools that they already have used to solve the puzzle of this much larger room. And what is most baffling to me is that this first room was the hardest part of the entire game for me, and I'm sure it's probably the same for many others. I just want to say, we got that egg, brought him around the track, brought him to that machine so I could get his arm to stick in this door. Well, when you say it like that... You may have thought, hey idiot, Portal is a very different game from Scorn. But if Scorn had taken from Portal's incredible tutorial, which doesn't even feel like a tutorial while you're playing it, maybe this large puzzle room would have felt incredible to solve, rather than frustrating, head-scratching, and a bizarre introduction to the game that it is. By using simple introductions to mechanics instead of the room of completely unknown ones, the game could have slowly dipped the player's toes into the metaphorical water of this disgusting and beautiful world's puzzles, rather than dropping them into it with cinder blocks attached to their feet. I like Scorn quite a bit, and I think there are a lot of positives to be said about it, but with a little help from Portal, Scorn could have had a much warmer reception. I hope that people give the game a shot, but unlike Portal's intro, you'll probably need a little help from Google on this one.